Christmas, everybody! Anna Morales here again, and welcome to another top video. You may remember that I made a video regarding my top 4 worst Trackmaster knockoffs video. But for today's video, I'm going to be covering my top 6 best Trackmaster knockoff models. Now, before we start covering the best Trackmaster knockoff models, from my perspective, let's go over a little history lesson about these. The Trackmaster knockoff models started to come around presumably around the early 2010s. These Trackmaster knockoff models are based on the original models distributed by Fisher-Price from the motorized railway era before the Trackmaster Revolution transformation. Some of these knockoff models might have been factory leftovers, like Emily and the original models of Edward and Renee's, while others are completely different models, like with Scarloey or Webb. Now, with the history lesson out of the way, let's start unboxing the top 6 best knockoff models, at least in my opinion. Number 6, Henry. I think this model of Henry looks decent because it's exactly the same model as his original 2014 model, but the only difference is his side rods. Instead of having the long side rods like Gordon has, he has normal side rods like Percy, James, or Thomas, for example. But the reason Henry is number 6 on the list is because people complain on how his side rods look, at least from what I've heard. And in some of the packaging, his tender face is backwards. But despite those problems, I think this model of Henry is a solid model. There definitely could have been some small improvements to add in on this model, but hey, it could have been worse. Number 5 is a two-way tie between Arry and Bert. Now, I do have the knockoff version of Arry, but I have the Hit Toys version of Bert. One reason I decided to add in Arry and Bert to the list is because if you have the Hit Toys or Fisher-Price version of Arry or Bert, but don't have the other twin, then this is one way to get a copy of Arry or Bert. Another interesting thing about the knockoff models of Arry and Bert is that when you compare the speeds to the Fisher-Price or the Hit Toys models, you can see that the knockoff model goes much faster than the Fisher-Price or Hit Toys model. And the reason being is because the knockoff models of Arry and Bert reuse Diesel's AA shell and motor, which explains why these models require a AA battery to insert. One more detail that I want to bring out regarding the knockoff models of Arry and Bert is that they have each other's faces swapped. Like Arry wears Bert's face and Bert wears Arry's face. But it's honestly not too big of a deal. To sum it up, if you're looking for models of Arry and Bert that are cheap and easy to find, I highly suggest that you pick these up. Number 4 is another two-way tie between Bill and Ben. Don't worry, guys, not all of my choices will be two-way ties. I admire how fairly accurate these models of Bill and Ben are to their original Tommy models, but with the only difference being their faces. While Bill reuses his original Tommy face, Ben's face has different eyebrows, which I think that's cool, so that way you can tell which one is Bill and which one's Ben. One last thing I want to share about these models of Bill and Ben is that they reuse Donald and Douglas's chassis, and their body shell is reshaped to accommodate to it. I'm honestly not sure why they did that, but I'm okay with it. All in all, these models of Bill and Ben look diverting. And if you're looking for some Trackmaster models of Bill and Ben, especially at a cheap price, then I highly recommend you pick these up. Number 3, Hank. I think this model of Hank looks cool because, unlike the official Trackmaster model, which has his battery motor inside his tender like Harvey, Emily, and Murdoch, this model of Hank has the motor inside the main locomotive itself. And another problem with the original Trackmaster model was, due to its length, it couldn't fit on most Trackmaster sets or accessories, which I think that this model of Hank improved on. In conclusion, If you're looking for a Trackmaster model of Hank, one that isn't too long, or one at a cheap price, then I highly recommend you pick this one up. Number 2, Donald and Douglas. Okay, this will be the last two-way tie I'm going to show for this video because I want to focus more on single picks for the rest of the video. One interesting thing about these models of Donald and Douglas is that their tenders, along with Edwards, have metal axles, which I honestly think is better because it makes the tenders run much smoother. A couple of other differences I want to address regarding these models of Donald and Douglas is that unlike the original models, these models don't have their cab windows. They have their nameplates where the original ones don't. And unlike Bill and Ben, these models have the same exact face. I'm not so sure why they did that, just like Bill and Ben, but as long as they have their nameplates and their numbers on their tenders, that's all I care about. Overall, I think Donald and Douglas are the best pair of twins in the Trackmaster Knock-off range because if you try to find the old models, they're pretty expensive. So therefore, if you're looking for Trackmaster Donald and Douglases, then I highly recommend you pick these up. Now before I show my number 1 pick, here are a couple honorable mentions. Duncan. He got beaten out by Bill and Ben. And even though many people complained on how bright his yellow paint is, I don't mind it. Gordon. He got beaten out by Henry. Rosie. I'll admit, I think this model of Rosie looks cool, especially since it's almost exactly like her original Trackmaster model, but she got beaten out by Bill, Ben, and Donald and Douglas. But I think this model of Rosie is still great, even though on some packaging her name is misspelled. Duke. Same reasons as with Rosie. Luke. He would have been number 5 or 6, and despite lacking a lot of detail like many of the other knockoffs, I don't think it's as bad as what most people make it out to be. Peter Sam. He would have been somewhere in the middle of the list, and just like Rosie, his model is almost exactly like his original Trackmaster counterpart, but with his body shell being one mold instead of his boiler being the only part that comes off where you place the battery. And I want to include pics that are mostly different from their original Trackmaster counterparts. Thomas. I'm starting to have second thoughts on this model because, according to this user, he says that the knockoff model has only one picture that has his pupils so big. And I would like to thank him for that. And my number 1 best Trackmaster knockoff model of all time is Rheneas. I know that a lot of people consider this model of Rheneas to be bad, but I think this model of Rheneas looks cool because in the actual show, he does have long side rods, unlike Skarloey. And interestingly, before this model of Rheneas came out, there were some releases that featured him with his original Trackmaster model, but in some of those packagings, it has his name misspelled to Renessa. One last thing I want to share regarding this model of Rheneas is that he reuses Edward's chassis. In addition, Rheneas isn't the only one who reuses Edward's chassis. Skarloey, Whiff, Stanley, and Luke all reuse Edward's chassis too. And that's something I regretted not to mention. In conclusion, even though Rheneas does have its differences from his original Trackmaster model, I still think this one is the best one, at least in my opinion, when it comes to Trackmaster knockoff models. So therefore, I recommend it. Well, that was my special Christmas video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments which of these Trackmaster knockoff models you think are the best. Do you agree with my list, or do you have your own personal preference? There will be one more video coming out in 2025 before 2026 comes. Stay tuned. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Bye-bye.